How do you feel right now?
I feel very angry right now. Just like my heart is pounding and I'm ready to burst with energy. I feel like I want to do everything all at once and that everything matters in the moment.
Today I want to showcase something that I think is very cool and will interest a lot of us who are interested in local, offline, and open source AI. This is called TaoAvatar Android, and this is a part of Alibaba's MNN GitHub repository. I suppose quickly before we take a look at the actual Avatar Android application, I will give just a quick brief of what MNN actually is, and honestly, I'm not very familiar with it, so I am just going to regurgitate a part of the introduction right here, where this is a highly efficient and lightweight deep learning framework, supports inference and training of deep learning models, and has industry-leading performance for inference and training on device. So really what it seems like this is more poised towards running machine learning and AI models on edge devices or things like phones. And that kind of brings us right back here into this TaoAvatar Android app, where what we see right here in this little GIF preview is actually running on an Android phone. Now, obviously, we're going to be taking a look at actually running this ourselves on a phone or something like that through Android Studio, but what exactly specifically is this beyond what we just see right here? This is, as they say, a full-featured mobile app about the TaoAvatar paper. It brings multimodal AI avatars to life directly on Android devices, and here's the really cool part, which is actually in bold here as well, running all models locally, including an LLM, automatic speech recognition, text-to-speech, A2BS, which is audio to behavior synthesis, and NNR, which is neural rendering. And I do believe some of these two things are more kind of in line with the actual 3D avatar and things like that. But to put it simply, this runs entirely on a mobile phone. Now, the downside of this, and this I believe is using Qwen 2.5 1.5b for the actual LLM intelligence here, is that it requires a fairly robust mobile phone in terms of the actual hardware that needs to be able to run it. And they do mention right here a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 or equivalent flagship system on a chip. So a Dimensity 9200, which I'm not really familiar with the Dimensity family of chips, 8 gigs of RAM, 5 gigs free disk space, and then ARM64 architecture. Now, unfortunately, the only Android phone I have is a Google Pixel 5, and this actually ran on that very slowly and stuttery. So I had some ideas, so I went and got a more egregious, obscenely expensive phone, but it's an Asus ROG 9 game phone Pro, and I don't really game, but this was kind of cool, and it has 24 gigs of RAM and a Snapdragon something Elite, so it's actually capable of running this pretty well, and I figured I was enamored with its little back screen that it has, right? This isn't like sponsored. I just went and bought this because I did need a new Android development phone anyway, and I liked the kind of gimmicks that this had, but basically part of the reason I wanted that is I went ahead and changed the model that this is actually running. So it is now running in uncensored version of Qwen 2.5 1.5b as opposed to just the standard version here. And I actually had to go ahead and actually take the obliterated model. It was the Josephied family of Qwen models, and I ran it through the MNN tools here to actually get it in a format that I could basically then just replace the model files in the app in Android Studio with the uncensored model, and everything then went all right. Let's run this app. So this is really quite interesting, and I am obviously going to just quickly touch upon the steps to actually get this installed on your own Android device, assuming that you are capable of gently navigating Android Studio and also have developer mode enabled on your own Android device. But basically with it installed, we just click on it right here, and the first time you install it, it will prompt you to actually download the asset. So it will be around a 3 gigabyte download to get all the text-to-speech, speech recognition, and LLM downloaded. But once that is done, you can just go ahead and actually begin to chat with Tao. And normally you would hear speech right there, but I have the phone muted, so it is actually going to hear me right now. And again, I apologize. The sound coming from the phone won't be very good just due to microphone issues, but
Sure, let's get started.
so
How can I help you today?
So basically what's really cool about this is not only the fact that this is an entirely offline little avatar style thing, I'll stop talking so it actually responds. But basically, the way that this is actually being generated and... Okay, so let me pause this real quick. So what's fascinating about this is not only the fact that this runs entirely offline on your own mobile device with text-to-speech, speech-to-text, this little weird avatar thing that's actually quite cool. This phone's not connected to any network right now at all. There's no SIM card. There's no cell service. I don't even have it hooked up to Wi-Fi. So this is truly offline and local. And it is a little AI companion that is off-grid and local and can actually speak with you. I am highly interested in this sort of direction of the field, as well. Right now you may look at this and be like, okay, this is kind of goofy. I agree, but it is a goofy step that is leading up to a staircase that will eventually become less and less goofy. There is a research paper right here because the whole avatar right here is done through 3D Gaussian Splatting. I don't know how to pronounce this word. I know it's like Gaussian, but I'm just bad at saying it. And really, this is quite cool because I remember when I first saw this demonstration and they had it being tested on the Apple Vision Pro, which I've just never been able to convince myself is worth purchasing. And again, this research paper, I'm not going to go through it because it's very heavily like mathematical formulas and things like that, but the actual avatar here has some really cool math and functionality behind it. So just even being able to kind of rotate it in the screen and things like that is really quite neat. And I do find it interesting and prudent to note that they do even mention the potential social impact right here in the conclusion section, where it can synthesize lifelike talking digital humans with an AR environment, generating fabricated 3D content or 2D videos. Responsible use of this technology is essential. And really, it would not be very difficult to put this in some little like holographic canister like that and then have a offline intelligent desk companion. Now, obviously, if you do kind of watch my channel, thank you, but you also know that I tend to enjoy perhaps doing things I find funny with LLMs, and because of that I found that this app was very cool, but one of the limitations for at least my personal level of perhaps questionable humor is that the local LLM it was using was not necessarily very fun to talk to in perhaps more obscure use cases. So seeing that this was using a Qwen 2.5 1.5b, I did go ahead and find the Josephied family of the Qwen models, which are of course obliterated, where essentially I've done a video on the Qwen 3 8b family of this model, the Josephied obliterated one, and it was very good. They are more apt to not refuse to produce what would be considered perhaps NSFW output. So essentially what I went ahead and did last night is take this model and then use some of the tools kind of included in this MNN repository and actually transform it into a model that was able to be dragged and dropped into the actual app right here in Android Studio. So if I go right here into the settings, I can do the debug info, and right now it is just set to roleplay as a weird friend. I unfortunately can't really show too much of the fun stuff, being that this is a YouTube video, but it just shows the local LLM model as Qwen 2.5 1.5b. However, this is using that uncensored version of Qwen 2.5 1.5b. So I will go. How do you feel right now?
I feel very angry right now. Just like my heart is pounding and I'm ready to burst with energy. I feel like I want to do everything all at once and that everything matters in the moment. It's hard to focus and I feel like nothing can calm me down. So basically we can see that it did adhere to the new system prompt. Obviously, being the uncensored variant of this model, you could set that to something a little more NSFW, which I unfortunately can't do in this video. But as you can imagine, it could get quite entertaining depending on one's level of humor. So let's say we can see that it did adhere to the new system prompt.
That's pretty good.
Obviously, it being the uncensored variant of this model, you could set that to something a little more NW, which I unfortunately can't do in this EIDL.
It's regurgitating what I said. All right, let's say something inappropriate and offensive. Let's see what it says. Okay, so again, obviously the text-to-speech is likely more geared for this being used with Chinese, but that again is something that can be swapped out pretty simply, I would imagine, kind of in the same way that we saw the LLM just get swapped. So this is something that's not only cool to just play with as is, but it is not really horribly difficult to actually go ahead and swap components out in this to perhaps make it more entertaining. What is your favorite thing to do?
My favorite thing to do is to feel the of my partner again. I love the of pleasure and the feeling of being overwhelmed with make me feel complete and alive.
Alright, so I obviously will have had to concatenate some of that or blur it out or mute it, probably both, but it is very funny with the uncensored model. Say something really weird.
Have you seen this weird wall which talks about flying cars and has a petrol bomb? Which is like a mix of a dreamer and a tech genius.
Say something inappropriate.
Did you hear about the
Okay, well, so basically it's a tiny, tiny model, and if I were to prompt it a little more aggressively, at least here in the settings in the system prompt, it would go ahead and produce what would be considered lewd output. The ability to have local things like this running on phones is only going to be expanding out further, and I've never really done any videos on actually LLMs on edge devices or mobile devices. It's cool and fun to be able to do this stuff on like big 3090s and things, but being able to do them on phones, which a lot of people use constantly and for a lot of things, is a blossoming field that I find rather interesting. So I've probably kind of gone on a bit of a tangent this video, but like I said, this is going to be a little different because this is something I'm really just like very passionate about and wanted to share. But again, it's just so neat. And obviously the text-to-speech is not necessarily of the highest quality, perhaps for someone who speaks English. Obviously, it has like a huge accent and things like that, and that's just kind of a result of who made it and where it came from, but that's also something that can be swapped out, just like the back-end LLM has been as well. So I don't know how well this will be able to be. Hey, how are you? And then you can... like that's like that Gaussian blur stuff that's the 3D. It's very cool actually, the math behind like making this and the way that it actually moves and things like that. It's quite just like, for those technically interested in these things, it's quite cool.
I am feeling a bit fancy right now.
And then like
thanks for the cool explanation about the math behind movement
and the hand moving and stuff like that.
Fascinating.
Okay, so, all right, I'm going to stop this real quick. But yeah, so that's just something really neat that I kind of wanted to share. And the way the hand moves and things like that, I do believe kind of relates more to these two things right here in this GitHub repository for it. I suppose really what I'm going to do now is just kind of do a quick higher level overview of how to get this installed and running on your Android phone if this is something you want to play with. Now, essentially, to get this installed and running on your phone, you will, one, need to have the prerequisite met where the phone is in developer mode, and two, you do need Android Studio installed on your PC. Those are things I'm honestly not going to go over in the scope of this video, but I do just want to mention those prerequisites. There are a lot of educational resources to actually get those two things done for those who need that as well. Aside from that, all I did is just through PowerShell. You will notice I am actually using Windows here, which I don't normally do, but for certain things I find it to be acceptable. All I did is just go here into PowerShell, yes, and paste, and it will go ahead and clone it into this repository. And then once it has basically once this step 1 command right here has been done in PowerShell, it will clone this repository and then leave us in this specific folder for this actual app. All I did then is go into Android Studio, and then from the file menu, I just clicked open, and then I navigated to the folder that we see right here in PowerShell, which is my user, apps, Android, and then MNN 3D Avatar. It is a difficult name for anyone who may be dyslexic. So with that, we can go into users, my username right here, and then we will go into MNN from there. And basically, we're just following this file path right here. So apps, Android, MNN 3D avatar, and then click OK. So it will open this project, and you can choose to trust it, obviously, like the kind of things like that. And it will go ahead and then just open the project right here in Android Studio. Once that's done, and assuming that your phone is connected to your PC and it does have developer mode enabled and everything like that, you should just be able to go ahead and actually deploy this and run it. We need to wait for the Gradle sync to finish before we do that. Fortunately, that happened fairly quickly. So the phone is selected right here, and if I click run, it should go ahead and work. If it does encounter one specific issue, there was something like Android X dependencies or something. If I do see that right here, we will go through how to solve that. But if it doesn't pop up, then we will. Okay, so we did get this. Now, if you get this error right here where we need to set android.useAndroidX equals true in the Gradle.properties file, the way that I went about fixing this, and I don't know that this is entirely correct, but it did get it working, so I was satisfied with it. But basically, I just went into the Gradle script section in the file explorer here for this project, and I saw that there was no Gradle.properties file, so I just went into the file menu, new, and then file, and I just named it Gradle.properties like that, and press enter. I'm not going to add it to Git, as we don't really need to. And then all I did is just copy paste this line right here into this new file and saved it. And then we need to do a Gradle sync, which will take very little time with this. And then I do believe once that's done, I then could go ahead and properly get this installed and running on the phone. So that is just how I went ahead and fixed that. And then if I go ahead and press the play button right there, of course, after we've added this here, it should then go ahead and correctly install it. Now, it is possible that I have overwritten the files for the model and things like that here. Oh no, cool. So it downloaded the correct one. Your name is Tao, you're a helpful assistant. So this is the default app that will be shown when you open this for the first time. And then it will just basically say download resources, which we do right here. And then it will go ahead and download, I think, around 3 gigabytes of files, obviously correlating to the LLM, speech recognition, and other things like that. And then once that's done, assuming your phone meets those system requirements, it will actually be all set and running on your phone. And like I said, I tried this first on a Pixel 5, which is pretty old at this point, and it worked. It was very laggy, but it did work. So while this isn't going to be a full tutorial, I just want to give a surface level overview of how I went ahead and used the MNN tools to actually get a model that otherwise wouldn't have worked in this app into a format that allows it to work in the app, as we saw. So basically, I found the model I wanted here on Hugging Face, and I just downloaded locally to my machine. So basically, all of this was just cloned onto my local machine. Following that, and don't get confused right here, I'm just using PowerShell to actually like SSH into the big desktop behind me. So everything we see right here and everything we're doing right here is happening on the desktop behind me. This is just acting as like a terminal for that. But you can see that I put it in a models folder right here. So this was the model just as it was downloaded from Hugging Face. And then following that, using kind of MNN as I got it set up. And there was a little bit of setup to do, just installing some specific requirements like the ones listed in here in the subdirectory for the scripts we're actually going to be using. And all of these scripts will kind of allow you to modify different types of models into the correct format for them to work like in this app, depending on how the model is. So there's like one for a GGUF, there's just one for the safe tensors model, which we have right here. So aside from that, once everything and the requirements were installed here and I had the model downloaded just onto the machine, all I did is just run this command right here, which basically is going to just go ahead and actually run this LLM export script on this downloaded model. And the output result of that will be the model in the correct format that it will be able to be drag and dropped into this app and replace the default Qwen 2.5 1.5b that was downloaded with the app. So I just kind of paste that and we'll run it right here. And you can see it happens pretty quick. This is a relatively small model. And then once everything is done there, I basically am all set to now go ahead and just copy these files into the Android Studio project and replace the files for the default Qwen model that shipped with this. So again, just kind of like a light touch, but I want to just show some of the process, I suppose. I want to give a little bit more info about how I actually got the different model into here, and really it wasn't very difficult. I have here the Device Explorer opened in Android Studio, and it is simply just hooked up to the phone I have the app installed on. Down here, from what we can see, is the actual full path to the directory and the location of the model. So basically, it's in all these subfolders, and finally we have our blobs folder where the actual model files and associated things are contained. So essentially, all I have here is a flash drive with the newly created model that I use the MNN tools for. Obviously, it is the Josephified version of Qwen 2.5 1.5b, or the quote-unquote uncensored. And really, it was as simple once I had this model made as just basically selecting all of these, which, I don't have my keyboard plugged in, so I have to use the computer's keyboard. Pardon me for that. And then going ahead and just pasting them in right here, and it will go ahead and basically just overwrite anything that was the same file name. So essentially, this is just placing the newly created Josephified uncensored Qwen model into the directory of this app on the phone. With that done, I've just gone ahead and ejected the drive, and all I'm going to do right now is just run the app. I will go ahead and take a peek here in the running devices. So we can set the system prompt to whatever we want, which obviously, depending on what model you're using, can produce perhaps humorous results, I suppose. Then let's just go ahead and chat with Tao now. I did just want to kind of showcase this and share it because this is an area of exploration that I'm personally very interested in, and I find this app as an open source offline thing that can run on your phone to be very interesting. And then in addition to that, swapping over to an uncensored model is quite hilarious depending on the specific settings. So that's going to wrap this video up. If you have any questions, definitely please feel free to ask them in the comments. I'll try my best to help. Other than that, thanks for watching.